Hello and welcome to Number by Color. My name is Todd and today I want to do another video that is a little bit different from what I normally do. I normally do review videos, but this one is not going to be quite a review video. See, a weird thing happened this year. Well, first of all, several weird things have happened this year, but as far as games are concerned, The Last of Us Part 2 came out earlier this summer, and that was a very divisive game. I reviewed it on this channel. I had a hard time putting that review together. I think it's one of my longest reviews, at least one of the longest scripts I've ever written for a game review, and that game really messed with me mentally. After finishing it, I had some sort of malaise when it came to deciding what to play next and what to do next. I really didn't feel like playing games at all. I was just kind of trying to find whatever I could to get that feeling back of wanting to play games, and I think it's because of just the nature of The Last of Us Part 2. So within the time frame between The Last of Us Part 2 and today, I guess, I've played several different games, some of them to completion, and I was planning on doing review videos for a lot of them, but I feel like now at this point I'm sort of too far removed from having played the games to really do a review justice, and I feel like maybe some of them I could do because it's not really that long. It's only, it's only a few months ago that this happened, but for some reason I feel like I just kind of am dragging my feet on these things. So I want to just get these thoughts out there for the world and then sort of move on with my life as far as, game playing goes. So what I'm doing today is I'm taking whatever footage I have for these several games, these handful of games, and I'm going to just give a quick sort of review. This is sort of like a quick rec almost, but I'm just combining them all into one video so I can use the footage and then just move on to the next thing, which is probably PlayStation 5 related because we now have next-gen consoles, or I have a PlayStation 5 now, and I want to start moving on with the things that I'm reviewing, and unfortunately I can't make full reviews for these videos or for these games, but I just still wanted to get my opinions out there because I like these games enough to actually recommend them to people, and instead of doing a quick rec for each of them, I just wanted to combine them all into one thing and then get it out there, and maybe it'll be useful for somebody. So first up, I want to talk about Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. This game also came out in June, and I started playing it probably around the same time as The Last of Us Part 2, although The Last of Us took more of my attention. I did make pretty good progress in Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, and I have to say, I really am enjoying the game. I haven't beaten it yet, but I got far enough into it where I know generally what the game is, the direction it's going, and even if I don't know all the twists and turns that happen later in the game, I know what the game is at its core enough to say that this is a really, really good RPG. In fact, I'd even say it's better than Xenoblade Chronicles 2, which is kind of a shame because that's the one I played first, and there was something about it that was sort of addicting to me, but there was also a lot of things that I thought could be improved upon. And for some reason, Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition improves on the things that the sequel did wrong, which doesn't make sense because these things were probably in the game before the sequel came out, so they just kind of removed some features that make the gameplay experience better. One thing I need to talk about with Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition is that the characters and the dialogue are way better than Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and I'm not really trying to compare both these games so much. I don't know why I'm doing that, but with this game, really though, the characters are really interesting and engaging. I care about them. The dialogue is pretty well written for the kind of game that it is, and I just feel more engaged with the story this time, and I am really enjoying what it has to offer. As far as gameplay goes, there's a lot here to dig into and enjoy. It is, of course, that Xenoblade Chronicles MMO style gameplay, but more than just changing out weapons and armor like a normal RPG, you can learn new skills. As you level up, you get points to attribute to the skills. You can level these skills up. You can put them in their own little skill deck that you can build out and swap out skills on the fly, and it's really fun going back and forth between characters and trying out their skills and making sure they have all the appropriate skills they need for any type of encounter. There's also different kinds of crafting systems and relationship building, and there's really so many systems here, and sometimes the amount of systems in games like this is a little bit overwhelming to me, but once you start picking up on what this game is actually doing, and it introduces things at a pretty nice pace, it's not all overwhelming, it really starts clicking, and there's so much to do that you're never really bored of what is happening currently. You can either do main missions, you can do side missions, you can help with relationship building, you can build up your skill levels. It's really, really fun, and the game itself, it's fun to play. Like, just generally, it's fun to play. That's really all there is to it. And for a game like this, I think the gameplay is really what matters the most. Of course, the story is important, but the gameplay is where it's make or break. And I feel like with Xenoblade 2, at least, that is where it sort of struggled because it was trying to do way too much. This game is a little bit like that. It's a little bit much, but I don't think it's too much. I think it's still really fun with how much there is here, and it's just streamlined. It's sort of like a quality of life thing. It just feels better, even though there might be a similar amount of things to do. It's easier to do a lot of them, so it just feels better to play. And I definitely recommend this to anybody who likes RPGs. Speaking of MMO-inspired games, number 2 on my list is a game called CrossCode. This came out in July of 2020 for the PlayStation 4. I know this had been out on Steam already, but I was waiting for it to come out on console before playing it, and I'm glad that I did because it's really good. I may be only a third or a quarter of the way through the game, but so far I'm really enjoying what it has to offer. The story is a little bit lighthearted, at least where I am now. It's not really too serious, and it really takes the trope of the MMO style anime or, you know, that sort of thing, and it just does it really well. And I think in that vein, the writing is pretty good because it's sort of self-referential. It knows sort of what it is, so it's not too serious, but it can be serious when it needs to be, which I think is really good and actually a hard blend to do, to know when to be serious and when to not be serious and be able to go back and forth between them without being super cheesy one way or the other. And this game does a really good job with that. So the game itself is a 2D action RPG with really beautiful pixel art, fluid animations, and really fun and engaging combat. There's more of an emphasis on character build-out in this game, and combat can actually be pretty challenging if you're not paying attention. I think the balance can be a little bit off. I feel like for a lot of the game, at least if I'm just going straight from story to story point, I feel a little bit underleveled. So there is a little bit of a grind that you have to do, or at least you have to really learn how the battle system works and how each enemy type works to really get the most out of it. But so far I've had a really good experience, and it's just really good. And if you've seen gameplay footage, which I've been showing you throughout this video, it should scratch a little something in your mind if you've grown up with this style of game. And I think you should really give it a chance if you're at all interested in this style, if you like action RPGs just in general. Even if you grew up on the 3D stuff, I think this is still a really fun game and it's worth checking out. Definitely worth the price. The last main game I want to talk about today, number 3, is probably the biggest of the 3 that I've talked about so far, and that is Ghost of Tsushima. Now, I really was planning to do a full out review for this game, but I think the time got away from me, and while I still probably could put something really good together for this game, I feel like I just want to not get rid, that sounds bad, but I want to get rid of the footage that I have and just kind of move on to the next game. That's not a knock against Ghost of Tsushima, by the way, because I love this game. This game is probably one of the highlights of the year for me. I really liked it. I liked the combat, I liked the story, I liked the world, I liked the characters. It's just, it all merged and clicked so well for me that I really couldn't recommend this game enough to people who like open world RPGs. It just really resonated with me. And I definitely needed that after Last of Us Part 2. This was obviously the next big Sony first party exclusive after Last of Us Part 2, and this was really the palate cleanser that I needed. And still, I want to go back and play more of it, but I have completed it fully, so I would have to start over again. But there is a new update in the multiplayer Legends expansion. I haven't played that. I don't know if I will. I've heard really good things about it. It's free, so that is really cool. But the game itself, the core game, is what I'm here to talk about right now. So first of all, let's just get this out of the way. This is probably the prettiest game that I have ever played. Apart from Final Fantasy VII Remake and The Last of Us Part 2, this is probably the first game that I played that was fully using HDR. I recently got a new TV. I did at the beginning of the year. So with that TV, I'm now able to use HDR on games, and this is probably the first one where it really stood out how good HDR can be for games. There is so much color in this world that it is almost insane. Sometimes I would find myself just stopping in a forest and just watching the leaves fall and just looking at the sun come through the trees. If there was one game that I wish had ray tracing on PlayStation 4, it would be this game. If this game had ray tracing, I feel like I just wouldn't even play it. I would just look at it. I would just stare at it the whole time. As far as gameplay goes, I feel like the game itself does a really good job of balancing all that it has to offer. The story sometimes has weird kind of pacing, but that is just sort of how things are in open world action games. There's always that disconnect between going to the next story mission or doing all the side stuff and clearing the map before you move on. But I think this game handles it really well because I never really found myself having to grind. And granted, I was doing a lot of the side stuff as it came up, but I don't think I really would have had to grind because there's not anything really that would hold you back. You might be missing some skills or the use of some techniques, but really it does a good job of keeping the difficulty pretty balanced throughout the whole game. As far as collectibles go, there are fox dens to find, or fox shrines, I guess, rather, to find. There are haikus, there are shrines and temples that you can go to, and there's a lot of different items you can equip to boost your character's abilities and make yourself look different. There's different kinds of armor, there are different kinds of weapons that you can use. It's just really, really fun and varied combat. And normally with these kinds of games, I sort of set myself into the same routine in most battles with using the same kinds of items. But for some reason with this game, I tried out most of what the combat has to offer, if not all of it. I'm sure I've tried all of it. But I found myself often going back and forth between different combat techniques, and I really enjoyed that about this game, especially how you can change stances in the middle of battle that are effective against different types of enemies. I found myself going back and forth on different things, and I'm normally not that kind of person. For example, when I played The Witcher 3, I barely ever switched between the two different swords. I know one sword was good for like humans and one sword was good for monsters, but I almost never went back and forth because usually I forgot about it, but it seemed like too complicated. I could never fully understand it, which is just a knock against me personally because I love The Witcher. I played so much of it. I should have understood this about it, but for some reason I didn't. But anyway, with Ghost of Tsushima, it felt different to me for some reason. I really enjoyed combat, all the different encounters that you have, just different ways to go about it. I really enjoyed that, and I like the variety that it offered. And when it comes to characters, this game has really good characters. The main story is not that interesting apart from just the characters that you have grown to love being part of the story, but the side stories are really where this game shines, in my opinion. There are a lot of characters you meet in this game who help Jin along his journey, and it's those characters who really shine in their own individual side story missions. Oftentimes, a lot of these side character stories started out in a simple way, but usually they build and grow over time where it's less predictable and it's often more personal, and it feels nice to experience these characters' lives and go through finding out who they are, where they came from, why they're doing what they're doing. It's just really compelling to me, and it was really engaging, and I often found myself wanting to continue their stories, but the game usually made it in such a way where as you finish each story, the next part of their story is usually like further off down the map so that you can't just do them all consecutively like really, really quickly. I guess you could if you waited till the end to do them all, but I liked that it gave you just a little bit at a time to kind of push everything along, and they all come together at the end, and it's just really nice to see all these different people mesh together to experience one sort of cohesive story. It was just really nice to me. I feel like the character moments in this game were really nice, and I feel like if there's anything that the game does really, really well, it's the different character moments and the character stories. I really enjoyed that. The combat, as I mentioned, is also really, really fun. The open world is beautiful. It's really, really nice. I'm saying really, really a lot. It's just a great game. Highly recommended for anybody who likes open world RPGs. Even if you don't, I feel like this game is still good. It's got a lot going for it, and I definitely think you should give it a try. It is definitely highly recommended for me. Well, I think that'll do it for now. Hopefully that was informative enough to give you an idea of how I feel about the games and whether or not you might like these games. I'll be back soon with more stuff. I'm working on another review. Hopefully I can get that up within the next couple of weeks if I decide to actually publish it. It is another game that I was working on earlier this year that I was going to include here, but I wanted to break it out because it's part of a larger series I'm planning on doing. Whether or not that comes to fruition, we will see. But for now, thank you for watching. Subscribe if you haven't liked the video, if you liked it, and I will see you again very soon, I hope. Take care and have a good night.